What's up guys, hope you're having a good day. In this video we're going to be taking a deep dive into each of the main card fights taking place this weekend at UFC 295. We're going to be breaking down these fights from a betting perspective, and hopefully you're going to be able to use the information in this video to make better betting decisions, maybe even earn some extra cash. And as ever, the information that I will be sharing with you is backed up by hours and hours and hours of fight research and over a decade of experience betting on the UFC. And talking about betting on the UFC, for a little bit before we get into the breakdowns, I want to share with you one of my recent UFC live bets, one of my in-play bets on Angela Hill from last weekend. As many of you will know, live betting on the UFC is my speciality. It's my bread and butter. It's what I do better than anything else. And you can see from our profitability chart here for live in-play betting that we make a profit almost every month and have done over the last, very, very long period of time since we started tracking results. And so if you watch every UFC event live and you're interested in live betting, maybe you want to give my live betting service a try. All you need to do, if you want to check it out, head on over to my website, mmabettingtips.com. You'll find a link for that in the description below. Scroll down and you can learn more about it here. Any questions, just let me know in the comments below or via email. And what I will now play for you is my audio commentary while the fight is taking place, where I basically broadcast my perspective on the fight and any bets that I find on each fight as the fights are taking place via a Discord audio stream. And that's what I'm about to play for you now. From last week's live betting session, here's our bet on Angela Hill. We placed the bet on her at odds of around 1.80, which is minus 125. It's great value. And fortunately for us, Hill came through for us in a big way. So here it is.
So this is one of those matchups where if Hill uses a grappling heavy game plan tonight, I think she can cause Gomez a lot of problems, because Mora's quite weak off her back. Gomez is quite weak off her back. Was out grappled by Loma Lookboonmee, who is, not very good on the ground at all. And literally, as we say, Hill may have the advantage on the ground. She opens the fight up with a takedown. I'm telling you guys, on the feet, this one's likely to be very close, very competitive, subjective. Who's going to, win the rounds? But I give Hill a huge advantage on the ground in this fight. And if she comes in with a grappling heavy game plan, based on past performances, I think Gomez is in a lot of trouble. But remember what I said. This is one of those fights where you definitely have to expect the unexpected, because 23-year-old fighters will improve extremely quickly. And so just because Gomez's ground game looked awful a year ago against Loma Lookboonmee, it doesn't mean it'll look awful now in 2023. Both girls have got pretty good cardio, so that shouldn't come into it. Gomez slowed a bit against Lookboonmee, but nothing major. And there we go. Remember what I said, guys. Gomez has a habit of pulling girls on top of her, and she did it there. Look at that, just pulling Angela Hill down on top of her. Very, very interesting how she's made that mistake again. She's close to popping back up to her feet, though. Hill looking to take the back. Doesn't get it. Gomez now going to wrist control. Wow, nice body lock throw there from Gomez. She's looking, scrambling to side control there. Crazy scrambles from these two. This is a fast-paced fight, considering it's supposed to be hot and humid in the arena. Midway point of round one, big right hand from Gomez, big follow-up left hand. Big shots here from Gomez. Both these girls are sprinting, and with Dominic Cruz and Michael Bisping saying it's hot and humid in the arena, are they going to be able to keep this pace up? With that, guys, I'm going to recommend a 1 unit bet on Angela Hill at odds of 1.80. 1 unit Hill, 1.80. 1 unit Hill, 1.80. 1 unit Hill. Get in on that. 1 unit Hill. 1.83, I like it. 1.80. The reason why I like Hill here, guys, is because I think she's far more likely to be able to keep up this pace than Gomez. Hill is also better than Gomez on the ground. So if both girls start to get tired and Hill can get into top position, Gomez likely isn't going to have the energy to work her way back up to her feet. So I know Gomez has got home advantage on her side, but these two girls are sprinting, and Gomez is very young, very inexperienced. Hill far more experienced. She's been in 5 rounders. She's the better grappler out of the two. When you've got two tired fighters, being the fighter who is more likely to find a way to get into top position, it's huge because your opponent's going to be tired underneath you. But we can see Gomez attacking with a Kimura here. Bad position for Hill to find herself in. She's trying to scissor her own arm to defend this position with a minute left to go. Her armbar defense is pretty good, though. We saw that in the Mackenzie Dern fight. Hill now trying to get to her knees as Gomez attacks the arm. This isn't terrible for Hill because, again, very, very fast pace. But there we go. There we go. Scrambles into top position. Beautiful. Her armbar defense is great. She trains with Jessica Penne. Even though Gomez might be winning this round, I think the round is going well for Hill because she's making Gomez work so freaking hard that when these two girls get tired, we know Hill is the better grappler out of the two. For sure. There's no doubt. Based on the Lookman May fight, Hill is much better on the ground. So the thing is, even though Hill may have lost this round, Gomez has exerted so much energy that when both these two get tired, if Hill is able to get into top position, Gomez is going to find it very, very difficult to find the energy to scramble back up to her feet. So I do like Hill here. I think round one is a very difficult round to score. If I'm honest with you, it was back and forth. Both girls had their moments. I think if you're scoring the round in its entirety, Hill won the round, had more takedowns, had more grappling control, ended the round in a dominant position. I don't think Gomez achieved a lot, but then Gomez had the flurry of strikes up against the cage. She's got home advantage on her side. She had the armbar attempt. I don't really feel strongly either way on which girl took round one. In Brazil, Gomez probably took round one, but I do trust Hill's cardio and experience more than I trust Gomez. Like I say, these two were sprinting in that first round. And with Gomez being young in her career, only having 10 pro fights, being pretty inexperienced, if Hill can find a way to get into top position, then she can run the clock down, she can tire Gomez out and start to put some rounds in the bank. We will see how it goes. We will see. So a crazy, crazy first round between these two. And let me know you're scoring it, guys. The bookies seem to think Hill won round one with home advantage. I wouldn't be so sure. We've also got to remember that one of Hill's strongest positions is the clinch. So if she can get to the clinch, start hammering Gomez's body with those knees, that can slow her down as well. We didn't really see Hill do much work from the clinch in round one. A little bit of clinch work up against the cage where she landed some elbows. Hill starting to find her timing on that right hand now. You can see a real difference between the two, right? Gomez heavy, flat-footed, powerful. Hill lighter on her feet. Both girls looking sloppy here at the start of round two. Not surprised at how much energy they exerted in round one. When you start to see a fighter throw spinning shit, it's often a sign that they're getting tired. A very sloppy capoeira kick there from Gomez. Nice outside leg kick there from Hill. Hill winning these striking exchanges, doing a good job of making Gomez miss, but obviously Gomez has the power. He's catching Gomez clean and hard with her boxing. Nice combo again from Hill. So Hill winning this round for me for sure at the moment. Nice right hand again from Hill. Flips her head off the center line, fires a right hand straight up the middle. Would love a takedown here from Hill, or maybe some knees in the clinch. Take the wind out of Gomez's sails. Good round this for Hill. Dominic Cruz also calling for the takedown. Again, nice counter right hand from Hill. Uppercut from Gomez, and Hill now gets to that clinch position where she's usually very effective with knees. A good round this for Hill so far, outstriking Gomez. Obviously, Gomez with home advantage. Midway point of the round. Nice jab from Hill. Ooh, spinning elbow from Hill. Hill much sharper on the feet here, doing a great job of making Gomez miss and landing a cleaner, harder strike. Love a takedown from Hill, though. Home advantage. You don't want this to be close. Hill in on a single leg, doesn't get it. Gomez attacking with a guillotine, but unlikely she's going to get that. 2 minutes left to go in the round. Great round for Hill. We need Hill to have a convincing round here because Gomez likely took the first. Nice elbow from Hill. Very, very good round this from Hill. Baldy head style D'Amato cage side, so we really want Hill to get some takedowns here and not make these rounds close. She has outstruck Gomez by a wide margin in this round and made Gomez miss wide on these big winging power shots. Nice kick to the body there from Hill. Oh, go takedown, guard. Ah, she couldn't establish top position. Nice takedown from Angela Hill, but couldn't get in the guard, unfortunately. That was nice timing on that single leg. Would love to see Hill end this round in a dominant position, but what can you do? At least she looked for it. Nice right hand there from Gomez. Minute left to go. Would love a takedown here from Hill. She has won this round pretty clear up until this point. Outstriking Gomez by a wide margin. Both girls exchanging elbows in the clinch. There's the knees of Hill. 40 seconds left to go. The crazy capoeira kick from Gomez. Not the smartest thing to do in a fight like this where you're already tired. The spinning attacks take a ton of energy and often don't land. And there you can see again Gomez pulling Hill to the ground or on top of her. You can see Hill doing a good job of staying square to Gomez to prevent Gomez from scrambling into top position. So great round for Angela Hill. It is possible that Angela Hill's up 2 rounds, but Gomez likely takes round 1 with home advantage. What I would say is, even in Brazil, it would be very, very difficult to justify scoring that round 2 for Gomez. So if Hill could get the fight to the ground, that would be huge. Nice combo from Hill. Nice body kick, right hand. Hill looking fresh here at the start of round 3, light on her feet. Hill pushing a pace here. Gomez came out the gate hard and Hill is meeting her head on. Body lock. Oh, man. So close to the body lock there. Hill's still working for it. Hill has the body lock. Yes. We love it. We love it. Gomez, again, with a nasty habit of dragging opponents on top of her. Instead of trying to defend the body lock, she went for a Kimura and enabled Hill to drag her to the ground off that. Now, Hill doesn't have a dominant position yet, but this is huge for Hill because she's wearing on Gomez, forcing Gomez to carry her body weight, running the clock down, scoring points. And here we go. Let's go, Angela Hill. Please come through for us here and kick the night off with a win if we can. Like I say, Hill might be up 2 rounds, but we want Hill to put a nice dominant 3rd round in the bank here because Gomez has got home advantage, which is always going to be scary if this fight goes to the judges. I would love Hill to just get a takedown here, spend the majority of the round in top position. Again, Gomez drops to the ground. Come on, Angela. Let's fucking go. Come on, Angela. Let's go. Grind her out. I don't like the back takes because when you go for the back takes, obviously Gomez could could scramble and hit a reversal. It won't be easy because Hill's legs are quite long, which means even if you do start to scramble, she can likely get her feet back on the canvas and regain her balance. But don't like it. I prefer the body lock and just control from Hill. Hopefully, by this point in the fight, Gomez is too tired to do any damage on the feet. All that body lock clinch work should have taken his toll out of Gomez. 2 minutes left to go. Great round for Hill. Nice jab from Hill as well. Gomez swinging for the fences, though, looking to end the round strong. Come on, Hill. Yes, yes! God, God, God! Yes, Hill! That's how we do! Yo, guys, how many of you watched the breakdown video for this fight, guys? How many of you watched the breakdown video? What did I fucking say? Everyone bumping their gums. Everyone bumping their gums about Gomez being powerful, Gomez being a tank, Gomez being this, Gomez being that. What did I say? What did I say? I said if Hill comes into this fight with a grappling heavy game plan, she's going to cause Gomez big problems. Big problems. What are we seeing? Grappling heavy game plan, big problems, and hopefully we're a minute and 10 seconds away for kicking November off with a win. Come on, Angela. Big, big, big performance from her. And surely not even in Brazil the judges can fuck this one up, as Gomez is belly down and mounted as the fight ends. That should be at least 29-28 Hill, as she gives up position right at the end of the fight, which is why I didn't want her to go for the back takes earlier in the round. But, oh, flying knee from Angela Hill. We love to see it. Come on. Should be 29-28 Hill at worst, but 30-27 Hill is almost on the cards. It's very, very rare that I am tempted to take my headset off and be like, I'll see you guys for the next fight when we've got a bet that's going to a decision. But I feel so confident in this one. Surely we can't get fucked here, boys. Yo, say her name! There we go, boys. Kicking November off with a win. Even money range. You love to see it.
Alright, so that was our live bet on Angela Hill from last weekend. Like I say, everything that you've just seen is how my live betting service works. I broadcast alternate fight commentary from a betting perspective, my perspective on the fight as the fight is taking place. And if I see any live bets, I share them with you so that you can lock them in yourself. And as you can see here, we make a profit almost every month live bet in the UFC. Over the last 2 years, we've made a profit on 75% of UFC Fight Night cards. So if you want to give it a try, head on over to my website, MMABettingTips.com. Scroll down where it says in-play betting tips. You click that. If you sign up and you don't like it, no problem, get in touch. I can give you a refund, no problem. But if you watch every UFC event live, I think you're going to like it a lot. Without further ado, I don't know what that means, but I say it anyway when I can't think of anything else to say. It's about time we break down some fights, and we're going to kick things off by breaking down the main event of this weekend's card between Jiri Prochazka and Alex Pereira. Sorry about the pronunciations of both guys' names, my British accent probably butchering them. I'm sure there'll be loads of people in the comments that'll be like, oh no, this is how you pronounce Jiri's name, you absolute dickhead. But anyway, Jiri Prochazka against Alex Pereira. Let's get into it. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Pereira is the slight favourite at average odds of around 1.80, which is going to be minus 125 for an implied probability of 56%. We take a look at the odds on Prochazka. He is around an average of, we'll call it 2.0, which is going to be plus 100 for an implied probability of 50%. So very close to 50-50 in the eyes of the bookies and the betting public. Prochazka, 31 years old, 6'3", with an 80-inch reach. Pereira, 36 years old, 6'4", with an 80-inch reach. So there are a couple of X factors in play here. The first is that Jiri is in his prime at 31 years old, whereas Pereira, a little bit older at 36. Now, Pereira hasn't shown any massive signs of decline, and he has only had 10 pro MMA fights, but obviously he's had a long kickboxing career, and so at 31 years old, even though Jiri's been out with the shoulder injury, we could expect him to be making big improvements from fight to fight, because he's absolutely in his prime at just 31 years old, whereas Pereira might be approaching that stage in his career, his late 30s, where he could start to decline. If he's not going to show any signs of decline in this fight, I wouldn't expect him to show much improvement either. He's probably at that stage in his career where he is going to be plateauing. Now, when you look at the tail of the tape, it looks like both guys are roughly the same height and have the same reach. But it is worth noting that Jiri is a very big light heavyweight. You know, when you look at Jiri, the way he moves, the way he carries himself, very difficult to ever visualize Prochazka being someone that could make the 186-pound middleweight limit. Whereas Pereira obviously did fight at middleweight. So even though on paper these guys are the same size, it's possible that Jiri could be the more physically imposing fighter in the octagon on Saturday night, because he's an absolutely enormous light heavyweight. We're not really going to know if that's the case or not until we see these two guys mix it up in the cage on Saturday night. But it's something worth bearing in mind, because while Pereira does hit very hard, we haven't yet seen that power transition up to the light heavyweight division. We know he hits very hard at middleweight, but will he be able to hurt these light heavyweights in the same way? Because he didn't really cause a 40-year-old Jan Blachowicz too many problems in their last fight, which is a little bit of a red flag if Pereira is going to be the ruthless, heavy-handed destroyer that a lot of people perceive him to be. Maybe he's just not as dangerous at light heavyweight. We'll soon find out, because obviously he's now in the title picture and he's going to be fighting the best of the best. Now, in terms of how these two match up from a stylistic point of view, we're going to talk a little bit about how they match up from a technical perspective in terms of styles, but I don't think the styles or the technique of either of these guys is going to be the determining factor in this matchup. I think it's going to come down to pace, output and work rate. And I'll explain why in just a moment. So if we consider how these two match up when it comes to grappling, you know, both these guys are predominantly strikers. So for the most part, you'd expect this to be a stand-up fight. You know, in terms of grappling, both are pretty bad on the ground. I mean, I know on paper Prochazka was able to submit Glover to Scherer in his last fight, which is not an easy thing to do. But if you watch that fight back in the cold light of day, it was one of those matchups where Glover just repeatedly made catastrophic errors on the ground, basically giving up position, just making all kinds of mistakes, which gifted good positions to Jiri on the ground. But in terms of the technique that Jiri displayed on the ground, very sloppy, very, very low level. Having said that, while we haven't seen a whole lot of Pereira's takedown offense and ground game, we know that when you do put him on the ground, he is not good. And so this is one of those areas where Jiri may have a huge advantage, and if there is any kind of size or physicality advantage for Jiri in the octagon on Saturday night, on the ground is where it may really show, because it's possible that Jiri could just kind of outmuscle, outwork and overpower Pereira if these two go to the ground. Now, Pereira never tries to take his opponents down. I think he might have tried to take Izzy down at one point when he was hurt on the feet. But for the most part, Pereira wants to stand and bang, stand and kickbox. Jiri will occasionally try to take his opponents down if he gets very hurt, but outside of that, for the most part, wants to stand and bang, go out on his shield. That samurai lifestyle, right? That samurai vibe that Prochazka rolls with. So on the ground, you'd give Jiri the advantage, but both guys really fucking bad on the ground, if I'm honest. And I know there will be a lot of people in the comments that will disagree with me, because on paper, Jiri submitted Glover, but I just say what I see, and all I'm doing is relaying to you what I've seen in the footage. Go back, watch Jiri Glover in the cold light of day. It ain't pretty. Jiri's ground game is pretty awful. Now, when it comes to striking, things get a lot more interesting, because while Pereira is by far the more technical striker out of the two. One thing that really slaps you in the face when you watch Jiri's fights in the UFC is how sloppy he is on the feet. He's wild, he's reckless, he's bad defensively, and he's easy to hit, which doesn't bode well when you're facing a heavy-handed sniper like Pereira. But what I like about Jiri is that he's an absolute dog. So while he does take a lot of damage in fights, while he is very reckless, while he is very sloppy, he's also one of these guys that could take a shot, has the heart of a lion, and zero quitting him. So in order to put someone away like Jiri on the feet, you really have to turn their lights out, which isn't an easy thing to do. He's very tough. Now, having said that, his chin isn't bulletproof. We saw that in the Volkan Oezdemir fight where he was wobbled multiple times, and Pereira's obviously a lot more dangerous than Oezdemir. But Jiri could take a shot. But on the feet, there's no doubt Jiri is much worse defensively out of these two. Now, earlier in the breakdown, I spoke about how I don't think technique is really going to be the deciding factor in this one. And so that's why I don't really want to dwell on technique or talk about technique too much. For me, this is one of those fights where if both guys show up and perform like they usually do, I barely give Alex Pereira any chance of winning a decision here, because he is notably and deliberately very, very passive. Pereira just doesn't do very much. If you look at Pereira's past fights, he's more of a single shot sniper that looks to just kind of catch his opponent with that big shot and put them away. He has nice leg kicks, yes. He does hit very hard. But for the most part, Pereira does a whole lot of nothing. His output is very low. Jiri, on the other hand, is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where this guy is action-packed, non-stop, big drama show, never stops throwing, never stops attacking, and while he's not as technical as Pereira, arguably doesn't hit as hard as Pereira either, what I like about Jiri is that he is always making you work. He is always engaging you. He's always taking the fight to you. And while Jiri is one of these guys that does take a lot of damage, and he does slow down as fights wear on, against someone like Pereira, I'm not overly concerned about Jiri slowing down against Pereira, because when Jiri does slow, it's through working hard and by the same token also forcing his opponent to work hard. So if Jiri were to slow in this fight, I think Pereira would be just as tired, if not more tired. So the way that I look at this fight is Pereira's got big power and he can knock out anyone in the world. There's no doubt about that. Jiri is wild, reckless, bad defensively. So it's absolutely possible Pereira could catch him with a big shot, ding, knock him out, right? That can happen. It's a cage fight to the death. Both these guys very dangerous. But, you know, the possibility of Pereira doing that to Jiri, from a betting perspective, we're talking probabilities, is somewhat negated by the fact that Jiri's also a pretty dangerous fucking striker. Might not be as technical as Pereira, might not be as technical as someone like Izzy, who has knocked Pereira out and wobbled him in their first MMA fight. But Jiri throws a whole lot of unorthodox, wild spinning shit that's hard to read, hard to see coming. Jiri also commits very hard to everything that he throws. There's not really any range-finding strikes with Jiri. Everything he throws is to try and kill you, which makes him very, very dangerous. So Jiri can also knock Pereira out. So they're both, I would say they're both as dangerous as one another. Pereira with the speed, the accuracy, that sniper style, but Jiri with his unpredictability and the sheer chaos and violence that he brings to the table. So while Pereira could knock Prochazka out, I'm not sure if it's a real advantage that Pereira has in this fight over Prochazka, because Prochazka can do it to him too. So the way I look at this fight is either Pereira knocks Jiri out, or you can pretty much guarantee he's going to lose a decision. Unless he can like knock Jiri down or wobble him or something in 3 of the 5 rounds to steal those rounds, I just don't see a way Pereira wins a decision here, because he just doesn't do enough. I find it very unlikely that Pereira would have the kind of output where he would be able to outpoint and take rounds from Jiri. It's just based on Pereira's style, not that likely. Now, we don't know, right? This is one of the biggest fights of Pereira's life. He's fighting for a title. Could be a 2-division champ, right? Obviously, he lost the belt to Izzy, but he won a middleweight title. It would be very cool if he could go and win another light heavyweight title on Saturday night. So who knows? Pereira might be a lot busier than usual, might be in better shape than usual, might have higher output than usual. But if we're trying to predict who's more likely to win based on past performances, for me it's absolutely Jiri. He's definitely my lean this weekend. Now, Jiri is a very tempting bet. I would love to bet Jiri, but we've already spoken about how great we do live bet in the UFC, right? We perform really, really well live bet in the UFC. We're also doing incredibly well with our pre-fight bets as well. And since making a change to my strategy back in, well, about a year ago now, we have really made huge improvements to our performance on pre-fight betting. So you can see here the point at which I changed my strategy. And if we just zoom in on this period of time, this was back in around about the summer of 2022. So yeah, just over a year ago now. If I just isolate this period of time to look at how we've performed since I made those changes, we have performed phenomenally well, to the extent that we've only had 2 losing months in the whole of 2023, one here and one here. So this is one of those kind of bets where, even though I'm very tempted to bet on Jiri because I think he's tough as nails, I think it'll be easy for Pereira to knock him out, and I think Jiri's going to outwork Pereira over 5 rounds. If I were to bet Jiri this weekend, even though the odds on him are very good, it would be breaking the rules of the shift I made to my betting strategy a year ago. And if we look at the profitability chart, you can see that, we were doing great here and then have like a period of breaking even for like a year. And, after this period of breaking even for like a year, I went and analysed all my, bets for that time period, right? And what I found was there was a trend where there was certain types of bets that I was performing really well on and certain types of bets that I would frequently lose on. And by cutting back or eliminating that category of bet that I consistently lost on and doubled down and only bet on the category of bet that I consistently performed well on, I was able to really turn my performance around. And the problem with betting Jiri this weekend is that it is one of those bets that I would not necessarily always consistently lose on, but betting on Jiri would be one of those bets where I've got a really solid bet on this week's card on the prelims, right? If that bet wins, which I'm really confident it will yield pretty much the same profit as what I'm risking on Jiri. And the reason why I break even for such a long period of time is because I would have this certain category of bet which I've got a huge edge on and a huge win rate on that performs really well. And I would maybe make a clean unit of profit on that. Then I would take that clean unit of profit, bet it on someone more risky like Jiri. They would lose and I'd be break even for the night or float around break even for a period of time. Since I just stopped betting guys like Jiri and tripled down on the other categories of bets that I perform really well on, well, this happens and we see a nice, beautiful, steady, consistent uptrend where we're just performing phenomenally well. And so as much as I'm tempted to bet Jiri this weekend, I know that if I want to keep the profitability chart grinding up looking like this, I need to be very disciplined, be smart, and just pass. And there's no shame in passing because, like I say, we've got a rock solid bet on the prelims for UFC 295. So there's no need to place bets on more risky fighters like Jiri, where he's coming off a significant shoulder injury and he's facing a guy that could knock him out with one shot. Let's just be smart and focus on the money, as they say. I don't think anyone says that, but I just fucking said it because I couldn't think of what else to say. So if you think about the over-under on this one, the fight not to go to a decision, the big favourite odds, right? Difficult to see this one go in the distance just because both guys have a tendency to slow down as the fight wears on. They both have that kill or be killed style. Dewey is the kind of guy that will sprint from the first second to the last and initiate action the whole time that the fight is taking place. Neither guy is particularly amazing defensively, especially when they start to get tired. And both guys, even deep in fights, have true legit knockout power with every single limb on their body. So I agree, not very likely this fight goes to a decision, but it's kind of baked into the odds, right? I wouldn't even touch the over under 1.5 rounds, because I could see this as being one of those fights where it's like a crazy war where someone gets killed in round 1, or I could see it being like a more grindy war of attrition where both guys show each other a lot of respect and they fight a little bit more cautiously than usual. We get that sometimes where, you know, two guys really respect one another's power, and so they're not as aggressive as usual. The best example I can think of this was probably Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis a few years ago, where, you know, Lewis had been racking up all these highlight reel knockout wins and Ngannou had been doing the same, and then they both faced one another and everyone was expecting it to be like this crazy, wild, you know, explosive knockdown drag out war where someone gets knocked out, but it actually went the distance and neither guy barely landed a punch in 15 minutes because they showed the other so much respect, because neither of them wanted to get caught. I could see something similar happening here. I just don't like the over-unders on this one. They're not for me. In terms of the prop bets, I think the most likely outcome is Dewey by knockout or TKO, but the odds are absolutely terrible, so I would give that a miss, and I certainly would not be betting that. So I hope you found that useful. And take a little bit of a drink. Ask you guys if you could like and subscribe if you haven't already. When people like this video, it's crazy how much YouTube boosts it, how many more views it gets, so it means a lot when you guys hit the like button for me. I'd really appreciate that. So now let's get into the next fight, another title fight between Sergey Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that both guys in that even money odds range. Aspinall the slight favourite at average odds of around 1.85, which is going to be minus 118 for an implied probability of 54%. We take a look at the odds on Pavlovich. He is around an average of 1.95, which is going to be minus 105 for an implied probability of 51%. So Pavlovich, 31 years old, 6'3" with an 84-inch reach. Aspinall, 30 years old, 6'5" with a 78-inch reach. Aspinall also coming on short notice. Now, both guys roughly the same age, roughly the same height, but you can see an enormous 6-inch reach advantage for Pavlovich. Now, Pavlovich doesn't use his reach particularly well for reasons I'll show you in some clips in a moment, but having a 6-inch reach advantage is pretty nice, and statistically it gives Pavlovich around about a 65% chance of winning. So that's a good advantage to have, especially against Tom, who's coming in on short notice. Now, if we talk about how these two match up stylistically, start off with grappling, because grappling is going to be, you know, the easiest kind of thing to cover, I guess. Simply because there's not tons of footage of grappling from either guy. Now, when you look at the footage on Pavlovich's grappling, really all we've got to work off is the Alistair Overeem fight, where Pavlovich looked absolutely awful on the ground, just had no idea what he was doing, no idea how to defend himself, which suggests with how slick Aspinall's looked on the ground in his fights against Marcin Tybura, Alexander Volkov, Andrei Arlovsky, even the Sergey Spivak fight, that if this fight were to go to the ground, Aspinall would have a huge advantage. We also know Aspinall's dad is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt coach. He does a coach black belt. Well, I suppose he does, but what I'm trying to say is Aspinall's dad, his career is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. And so Pavlovich looked very low level on the ground against Overeem. Now, we haven't seen him on the ground for 5 years, so it's possible that Pavlovich could have made a big improvement since then, but ultimately all we can do is make the best decision possible with the information we've got available. Based on the footage we've got available, Pavlovich is very bad on the ground, and Aspinall should have the advantage there. Now, it won't be easy for either of these guys to take the other down because they're both big, strong, athletic, physically imposing heavyweights. If the fight went to the ground, you'd assume Aspinall would have the advantage, although if he's on the bottom with a big, heavy, strong Russian on top of him, that might not mean a whole lot. But obviously both these guys are primarily strikers, so you would expect this to be a stand-up fight. It's certainly going to start standing, and if the fight stays standing, give a pretty big advantage to Tom Aspinall. And it's not just because Aspinall is from the United Kingdom and I'd love to see another British champion. It's actually because when you look at footage of both guys, it is pretty clear who the better striker is out of the two. I think this is one of those matchups where Aspinall is levels and levels and levels and levels above Pavlovich on the feet, which doesn't mean anything if Pavlovich punches Aspinall really hard in the face and knocks him out, which can absolutely happen. But what I want to do is show you a little bit of footage so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Because I know there'll be loads of people in the comments like, oh my god, how can you say Pavlovich is so much better than Tom Aspinall? Oh, have you seen this fight? Da da da. Have you seen that fight? What about this? You're so wrong. You're clueless. Blah 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 blah. So the best thing I could do is just show you guys some footage. So what I want to do, first of all, is show you footage of Mr. Pavlovich. And in fact, we'll alternate. We'll do Pavlovich, Tom, Pavlovich, Tom, Pavlovich, Tom, and then it'll sink in. So, it's kind of like a quote you hear in combat sports, that straight punches beat wide punches, right? So, what Pavlovich has done in his time in the UFC, what he's been very effective at doing, is overwhelming opponents with speed, power, and aggression. I wouldn't necessarily call Pavlovich a particularly skilled striker. Pavlovich is one of these guys that just basically backs himself to come out on top in moments of chaos. He's one of these guys that looks to catch his opponents cold. Because if you think about it, right, if you're a mixed martial artist and you're going into a cage fight to the death against another professional killer, you've got cameras pointing at you, you've got bright lights, you're thinking about your family, your friends watching at home, you're thinking about your coaches, thinking about all your responsibilities, all your pressure, you're carrying all that performance anxiety. You feel the canvas under your feet. It's not like a natural environment to be in. No matter how experienced you are, ideally you'd like just a little bit of time, 30 seconds, a minute, few minutes, just to get comfortable in there and find yourself, right? So you can get your breathing under control, your heart rate under control, you get a little bit comfortable in there, right? The last thing you need in a super intense situation where you make one mistake and it's over, the last thing you need is a crazy, giant, 6'4" Russian dude with nuclear bombs in his hands bum rushing you, trying to kill you. Because you haven't settled down yet, you haven't warmed up, you haven't got comfortable, and no matter how experienced you are, there is no way to simulate a giant 6'4" Russian dude running at you in a straight line trying to kill you. You just can't simulate it. So Pavlovich has built a career in the UFC of catching guys flat-footed and cold before they have a time to calm down, settle down into a rhythm. And, you know, there are guys like Pavlovich who have some success with this style, right? Terence McKinney had a lot of success with this style. But my question for guys like McKinney, guys like Pavlovich, is what happens when you run into a dude that weathers the storm? We haven't got the answer to that question with Pavlovich yet because no one's been able to weather the storm. What happens, or what happened to McKinney when guys started weathering the storm, right? Guy couldn't buy a win. So I'm very interested to see what happens to Pavlovich when he runs into someone that can weather the early storm. Take a look at what I mean. This is fight against Curtis Blades. So what I want you to do is just pay attention to Pavlovich's technique, because like I say, straight punches beat wide punches. Watch the technique and the way that Pavlovich throws. So we don't want to make this super long, so we'll just skip forward a little bit here. A little bit here. Here we go. Here's when it starts to spice up. So Notice how Pavlovich, for the most part, throws big wide hooks, and he's very wide open down the middle. Doesn't move his head a whole lot. Just plants his feet and just throws these big winging wide hooks to try and kill you. For the most part, that's what Pavlovich is bringing to the table. Watch. Big wide hooks. But wide open down the middle. Watch. He just doesn't move his head very much at all. Watch. Big wide hooks, right? Big wide hooks. But he's wide open down the middle. Doesn't move his head. What big? You see what I'm saying in sequences like this, right? Watch. Sequences like this are really important for when we watch Aspinall. Plants his feet right in front of his opponents. He has got his chin tucked here, but still not moving his head, and he just stands in front of his opponent throwing wide hooks, playing rock'em sock'em robots, right? And he actually eats a counter punch here from Curtis, but Curtis obviously doesn't have too much power in his hands, not really able to hurt Pavlovich with his counter. Watch this counter. I've gone back too far, but watch. Plants his feet, wide hooks. Now Curtis throws a counter there, lands the left hand clean on the button. But Pavlovich is just like, fuck it. Fuck it. Fuck it. I just want to play Rock'em Sock'em Robots. This is kill or be killed. Mortal Kombat. You know what I mean? He's watched the Wanderlei Silva instructional DVD on how to knock motherfuckers out. He ain't taking a backward step. He's coming forward. He wants to kill you. So he's just going to play Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And that's all there is to it. But he will just stand in front of you, throwing big wide hooks. Look at this. Wide hooks. Stood in front of you. Wide hooks, just bang, 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 bang. Just wants to knock you out. He's wearing a little bit of damage on his left eye as well. Don't worry, the fight ends soon and then we're going to move on. A couple more clips just to highlight the point I'm trying to make. But just wide hooks. Big old wide ones. Wide open down the middle. Notice there's quite a bit of a slowness about Pavlovich as well, right? He's big and heavy and clunky and slow. Flat-footed. Hits very hard. But look, just in front of fucking... He's fucking popped the Wanderlei Silva DVD on. He's fucking rah up against the cage trying to kill Blades. But again, look at how slow he looks here. And this is only 2.5 minutes in. He's a big old scary Russian that hits hard. But look how slow he is. Big wide hook. Slow. And the longer the fight goes, the slower he's going to get. Those big old arms are going to get tired. And it's over soon. Big wide hooks though. Look at the wide hooks. Wide. Head's not moving. Wide open down the middle. Wide open down the middle. Blades can't make him pay. He's landing counters but just doesn't have the power to hurt this big, scary Russian. It's going to be even more big and scary when USADA disappear in January. Look at this. Big old wide hooks. And eventually Blades just can't take the big old shots anymore. So now let's take a look at Aspinall. He wants the belt. He might get it. He does hit hard. He's a big old scary motherfucking Russian. But in my opinion, Mr. Aspinall levels and levels and levels and levels and levels above Mr. Pavlovich when it comes to striking, because speed, accuracy, timing, footwork, movement are all on Mr. Aspinall's side. Straight punches beat wide punches. Now look at the difference in the footwork, the movement, the speed, the accuracy. Pavlovich planting his feet, chin up high and exposed, throwing these big wide hooks. Have a look at Mr. Aspinall. Speed, in and out, throwing straight punches, firing them right down the middle. Look at this. Doesn't want to get into any big exchanges with Tybura. Just looking to stay light on his feet, pop crisp, hard power punches down the middle. Look at the difference in movement. And when he lets his hands go, you'll see the difference in technique. Look at that. Tybura, as he comes forward, can't get near him. And remember how slow. Look at this. Look, in and out. Straight punches. Very nice, crisp technical work. Beautiful work from Tom. Now, we don't know for how long Tom can keep this up in a fight, because obviously all this footwork movement takes a lot of energy. Maybe he slows down a lot after round 1. I think the average fight time for both these guys is like 2 minutes, so we don't know how either of them is going to look deep. But you can certainly see Pavlovich's hand speed looking pretty slow after just 2-3 minutes in that fight against Blades. Like I see, straight punches beat wide punches. Look at the speed of Aspinall. Let's watch it in real time as he stings Tybura with that straight right. Look at that. Just stings him right down the middle. Conor-esque from back in the day in his featherweight run. Look at that. Speed. Straight down the middle. Let's look at it in slow-mo because it is absolutely beautiful. Straight punches beat wide punches. And if Aspinall is springing in and out of range like that, Pavlovich is going to have his hands full because he's going to be way too slow to deal with those straight punches down the middle. He ain't going to have a whole lot of success countering with those big, wide hooks. Take a look at the Tuivasa fight between Pavlovich. It's even more apparent in this matchup, in my opinion, than the Curtis Blades fight. Let's bring Mr. Pavlovich back up. Remember what I spoke about with Pavlovich, relying on his ability to catch guys cold. Don't get me wrong, he seems like a nice dude, a friendly dude. He'll give Ty a little hug here, no problem. But he relies on his ability to catch guys cold before they have a chance to settle. And in this fight, just pay attention again to how reckless Pavlovich is. Wide hooks, chin up high and exposed. Just take a look. Again, look at this. Just look at it. I just feel like I'm repeating myself. But look, he just stood in front of Ty. Wide hooks. Big, heavy, wide hooks. Big, heavy, wide hooks. Big, heavy, wide hooks. Imagine Aspinall stood in front of him. In and out. Speed. Straight punches. Accurate. Look at this. Big, wide hooks. Look at it. He's not moving his head. Just literally just fucking swinging for the fences. You imagine Aspinall, he's going to be light on his feet. Like, look at this, playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Like, don't get me wrong, he's big and he's scary. And he can absolutely catch Aspinall flat-footed and cold and kill him. It's a cage fight to the death. Pavlovich is adept at, inflicting serious violence on guys. But technically, Aspinall levels above this guy. Shall we take a look at one more clip? Just to kind of hit home what I'm trying to show you. This is Mr. Volkov against Mr. Aspinall. And as you can see earlier on where we went through the tail of the tape, now you can see why I don't think the 6-inch reach advantage for Pavlovich is going to count for all that much in this fight, simply because he just doesn't really use it. He doesn't fight long, doesn't use his length, he just throws big wide hooks. So again, it is from Aspinall, just very light on his feet, in and out, head movement. It's not going to be easy for Pavlovich to have success with those big wide hooks that he likes to throw when Aspinall's coming down the middle with speed and accuracy. Nice outside trip. We can leave it there, right? Don't need to go in. I could play every Aspinall fight, and you see the difference in his footwork, his movement, that kind of thing. But ultimately, for me, Aspinall is just a better striker here, and in what is likely to be a stand-up fight, that gives him a pretty good chance of winning. Doesn't mean Pavlovich can't catch him cold, knock him out early, but I think the longer the fight goes, the better it gets for Tom. And once he finds his range, settles into a rhythm, I think he'll start to pick off the bigger, slower Pavlovich, start to pick him apart, start to outclass him a bit. Now, from a betting perspective, what does all that mean? Well, in the Pereira versus Prochazka fight, where we broke that down, I spoke about how we were doing phenomenally well on pre-fight bets over the last year, and how we've only had 2 losing months in the whole of 2023. The reason why I was able to dramatically improve my performance on pre-fight bets was by eliminating certain categories of bets that I place, which were preventing me from really breaking out and consistently grinding out profits and making profits most months. And so unfortunately, as tempted as I am to bet Tom Aspinall and how, I absolutely think he's more likely to win this weekend, again, just like I said with Jiri, Aspinall does fit the profile of a fighter who has held back my performance in the past and has, resulted in me floating around break even for long periods of time. Where you see this period of break even here before we, make big improvements back here in, last summer and start to grind out big profits. Aspinall was one of those fighters that I would consistently lose on. We're in a situation this weekend where we've got a rock solid bet on the prelims. I'd be really surprised if we were to lose that bet. And if I were to bet on guys like Aspinall or Pereira this weekend, I would essentially have to take what profit we might make off the bet on the prelims and place it on guys like Jiri, guys like Aspinall that are a lot more risky. Because even though you can look at fights like Pavlovich, Aspinall, Jiri, Pereira, and identify that Jiri and Aspinall have clear and obvious advantages over their opponents, if Pavlovich or Pereira punch them in the face really hard and knock them out, it doesn't mean anything. And ultimately, you can have all the value in the world on a fighter. In a cage fight to the death, doesn't really mean a whole lot if they get absolutely bodied with a clean hard shot that knocks them out. Last time I tried paying my mortgage with value, the bank wouldn't accept the payment. And you can see from the profitability chart and the way we've turned things around, the current betting strategy I'm using for pre-fight betting works so well. From my perspective, even though it's boring, there's just no need to break a winning formula. I'm very happy continuing on this path. And while it is boring, while it's not for everyone, we are grinding out a profit almost every month now. And I absolutely fucking love that. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to keep doing that. So as tempted as I am to bet Tom Aspinall this weekend, well, I do think it's more likely he wins. It doesn't fit into the kind of bet that I know I have a huge edge on. So I'll be patient. I'll wait for those type of bets to pop up. Obviously, we found one this weekend on the prelims. And I've still got some more fights to research on this card. So maybe I'll find some more. Now, in terms of the over-under on this one, it's interesting. Obviously, very unlikely this fight goes to a decision. Both guys very dangerous. Both don't have that much experience going past round one, so they both probably slow down a lot if the fight goes into like that third, fourth, fifth round. Under 1.5 rounds, I wouldn't touch that. I wouldn't touch the over. I don't have a strong feeling on the over-under on this one. The most likely outcome in this one for me is Aspinall by knockout at TKO, but the odds are very bad, so I would not bet that. The odds on Aspinall by submission as well, if Pavlovich were kind of too tired to defend himself on the ground, get submitted, the odds on that aren't great either. So I would give props a miss on that fight. I hope you found that useful. Now, let's break down the next fight on this card, which is going to be Mackenzie Dern against Jessica Andrade. Now, Mackenzie Dern was one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet on this card. I ended up liking her a lot less than I thought I would after researching it. That's the way it goes sometimes. But let's take a look at the odds all the same and delve into how these two match up from a stylistic point of view. So Mackenzie Dern is the favourite at average odds of around 1.48, which is going to be minus 208 for an implied probability of 68%. We take a look at the odds on Andrade. She's around an average of 2.65, which is going to be plus 165 for an implied probability of 38%. So Andrade is 32 years old, 5'1" with a 62-inch reach. Dern, 30 years old, 5'4" with a 63-inch reach. So both girls roughly the same age. Not a massive difference in size either. Dern a little bit longer, a little bit taller, but what Andrade lacks in height and reach, she more than makes up for in an abundance of physicality. So, very, very interesting matchup between these two. Obviously, it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup, and if the fight stays standing, it's going to be a tough night for Mackenzie Dern. If it goes to the ground, Dern will utterly dominate Jessica Andrade. So the reason why Mackenzie Dern was one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet on this card was because of how bad Andrade is on the ground. Andrade is a very strange fighter because when you look at her style of striking, she looks very powerful, very athletic, very physically imposing, and we've all got, we can all recall how she literally just picked Rose Namajunas up like a child and slammed her on the ground, in one of their fights. So there's certain aspects of Jessica Andrade's game where she looks very strong, very powerful, very physically imposing, the kind of fighter that would completely overwhelm someone more slight and feminine like Mackenzie Dern. We talk a lot about how physicality can have a profound impact on the outcome of women's MMA fights. And when you look at someone like Mackenzie Dern, very slight, very feminine, Andrade very tough, very physically imposing. Matchups like this stylistically is where physicality can have a huge impact. But Jessica Andrade is a very unique fighter in that there are certain aspects of her game where she has an abundance of physicality, but then on the ground she's actually very, very weak. She's weak off her back, she doesn't look particularly strong on the ground, submission defense is very bad, her physicality really doesn't translate to her ground game at all, which is really strange because physicality is often one area where it kind of can close a skill gap on the ground. We're talking a little bit about how bad Jiri looked on the ground in his last fight against Glover Teixeira. One of the reasons why Jiri was able to somewhat get away with having an awful ground game, because he's a big, strong, physically imposing monster, which made it very difficult for Glover to kind of hold him down and control him in certain positions. Andrade is a big, scary, physically imposing monster in the strawweight division, but none of that scariness, that physicality is present in her ground game. So if this fight does go to the ground, she's going to be in a lot of trouble. I would imagine Mackenzie Dern would submit her very quickly. So whenever we're dealing with a Mackenzie Dern fight, the breakdown is almost always the same. I feel like I can copy and paste what I say about Mackenzie Dern in any one of her fights and apply it to any one of her fights, where breaking down a Mackenzie Dern fight is always around whether or not she can get the fight to the ground, because if she can, she's usually a death sentence for her opponents. Now, a few of her past opponents, Zhao and Yan in particular, have been able to survive on the ground and then cause Dern big problems on the feet, but a lot of girls, if you get taken down by Dern, fight's over and you're in a lot of trouble. And I think that's what it's going to be like for Andrade, because the skill gap between these two is massive, and I'd imagine Dern will submit Andrade pretty quickly on the ground on Saturday night. Now, Mackenzie Dern's a very strange fighter because we've seen massive improvements from her since she came to the UFC in many different areas. And we know that she's an ultra high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She might be the most dangerous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in the UFC, might be the most dangerous submission grappler in the UFC. In fact, I actually think she is, predominantly because Dern is one of these fighters that can just relentlessly spam submission attempts and scramble for 25 minutes, and she never gets tired on the ground. She's an absolute phenom when it comes to grappling. Dern's problem has always been she has virtually no wrestling, and so while she has an elite ground game, she really struggles to get fighters to the ground. And this is incredibly frustrating for me, because when she first came to the UFC, we saw that she had this elite ground game. And I remember back then saying to people in my community, if Dern just develops semi-decent offensive wrestling, she's going to be a world champion and no one is going to be able to stop her. Because if she's able to get girls down, there's very, very few fighters in the division who are going to be able to stop Dern from doing whatever she wants to do to them on the ground. But I feel Dern made a pretty bad career choice when she chose to prioritize improving her striking over her wrestling. It was a very, very big miscalculation, and I feel where Dern has struggled against some fighters like Zhao and Yan, in recent fights, that's predominantly the reason why. I think she made some pretty bad career choices. Because when Dern first came to the UFC, she had no striking, right? She was just kind of zombie forward in straight lines, blocking punches with her face. And she took a lot of damage, and it was clear that she had to improve her striking. But the mistake that Dern made was going to train with Jason Pereira and having a lot of success improving her striking a lot, but not really improving her wrestling that much at all, which means you've got a huge disconnect now where Dern has got the elite ground game that she's always had. She's got average striking where she's a little more dangerous offensively than she used to be. She's a lot better defensively than she used to be. But Dern's still not good enough to really give any top tier strawweight a problem on the feet. She just now kind of has serviceable striking. So you have average striking, elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, elite ground game. But then there's like this void in the middle, this gap in the middle, where her wrestling has just barely improved at all. And she still really struggles to get her opponents to the ground. All her takedowns come way too high up above her opponent's hips. And she kind of relies on, you know, these low probability trips and throws and shit to get her opponents to the ground, or her opponents making a mistake, slipping, that kind of thing. But she's very, very, very ineffective at getting her opponents to the ground. And every time I'm breaking down a Mackenzie Dern fight, I talk about how, you know, she's young enough to be improving. At 30 years old, she is young enough to be improving. But this weekend is going to be her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th fight in the UFC. And I don't feel like we've seen any big improvement in her wrestling from her very first fight in the UFC. Don't get me wrong, there has been improvement there. But her wrestling is still really ineffective, which is very strange for someone with this much experience, this much skill on the ground, and the resources that Dern has behind her. It's just a very strange one how her wrestling is still so bad. And so it's another fight where we're saying, you know, if Dern gets this fight to the ground, she'll absolutely cook Andrade. She's in a lot of trouble. But at big favourite odds, tough to feel confident in Dern's ability to get this one to the ground, because Andrade is strong. She is a tank. Her takedown offense isn't awful. And on the feet, she is a very physically imposing fighter. So when Dern is going to be trying to grab hold of her above hip height and go for these, you know, body lock trips and throws from the clinch, it's not going to be easy to take Andrade down from that position, because she's so strong in the upper body and she's got that low center of big underhooks. Jessica Andrade's fight against Erin Blanchfield is a really good reference point, because Blanchfield is a far better offensive wrestler than Mackenzie Dern, and she really struggled to get Jessica Andrade down in that first round. Andrade ended up giving up a cheap takedown in round 2 and was submitted. That's the way it goes. But Blanchfield really, really struggled to get Jessica Andrade to the ground. And so this is one of those fights where if Blanchfield struggled to get Andrade down, and we know Blanchfield is an exponentially better wrestler than Mackenzie Dern, you'd anticipate Dern would have a tough time getting the fight to the ground as well. And on the feet, because of how bad Dern still is defensively, how hard Andrade hits, you could envisage a situation where Dern takes a lot of damage on the feet here and maybe too beat up, too hurt to get a takedown. After like the 6 or 7 minute mark, because of how much damage she might take. Because the thing with Dern is, Dern's main strategy of getting fights to the ground, and it's a big shame that this is her strategy, because I think with a little bit of wrestling she could be fucking unstoppable. But Dern's strategy for getting fights to the ground is to basically like overwhelm her opponents in chaos to the point where they make a mistake and they slip or trip or fall into one of her not particularly effective throws. So what you see from Dern is she comes forward in straight lines, taking loads of shots on her way in, just spamming punches and trying to grab a hold of her opponent. But she takes a lot of damage on the way in, and she's very tough. She's got a good chin. There's no quitting her. But it's not a particularly effective style, again, especially against someone like Andrade that has major power. On top of that, Andrade is also coming into the fight on a 3-fight losing streak. Now, I know those losses have been to 3 of the best fighters in the division, but you already know what's up when you lose 3 fights in a row, right? Most fighters that lose 3 fights in a row are released from the promotion. You really, really don't want to be losing 4 fights in a row. So if Andrade wants to keep her job in the UFC, which I'm guessing she does at only 32 years old, nowhere near retirement age yet, she wants to keep pumping her OnlyFans account and keep her job in the UFC. She really, really needs to win this weekend. So if ever there were a time where Andrade is really going to show up, fight smart, then you'd expect it to be this weekend. And on top of that, Dern's not a particularly tricky fighter to game plan for. You know exactly what she's going to try and do. She's going to try and punch her way into the clinch, then try and drag you to the ground with body lock takedowns. So Andrade is going to know exactly what to expect. Stay on the back foot, stay on the outside, and just throw those big hulking hooks to punish Dern on the way in. Be interested to see how this one goes. Dern gets the fight to the ground with 2-3 minutes to work. I think she submits Andrade. If it stays standing, Dern's going to take a lot of damage. So this is one of those fights where I do lean towards Dern, because Andrade has got a habit of giving up cheap takedowns out of nowhere, and I think if she just gets taken down one time in this fight, Dern's going to put her away because of how bad Andrade's ground game and submission defense is. But it won't be easy for Dern to get the fight to the ground. So with Dern being a big favourite, she's just not interested in me as a bet, because I think the odds are not a particularly good risk to reward ratio. Now, in terms of the over-under on this one, the over-under is set at over 1.5 rounds. I don't have a strong feeling on this, because if Andrade gives up a cheap takedown in round 1, I think Dern will submit her very quickly. But if Dern can't get the takedown, we know she can take a shot. We know she's got a great chin. I could see this one turn into like a 3-round war of attrition where Andrade inflicts a load of damage but can't get Dern out of there. So I don't lean too confidently either way on the over-under. I'm not going to be betting that myself. In terms of the props on this one, I think the most likely outcome is Dern by submission, but the odds are absolutely terrible, so I would not be betting that. I would give that a miss. So I hope you found that breakdown very, very useful. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like these breakdown videos and you want to watch breakdown videos for all the prelim fights on this card, head on over to my website, MMABettingTips.com, where you can find breakdown videos for every single fight on every single UFC card, which you can use to save yourself some time. You don't have to research the fights yourself. Then you can kind of use my videos as a strategy guide to plan your bets, figure out what fights you want to research yourself, and just have a general idea of how both guys match up from a betting point of view. Now let's get into this next fight, which is going to be Matt Frevola against Benoit Saint-Denis. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Saint-Denis is the favourite at average odds of around 1.44, which is going to be minus 227 for an implied probability of 69%. If we take a look at the odds on Matt Frevola, he's around an average of, call it 2.85, which is going to be plus 185 for an implied probability of 35%. So Frevola is 33 years old, 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Benoit Saint-Denis, 27 years old, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach. So not a massive difference in age between these two. Frevola getting a bit old for a lightweight, but nothing major. Now, the age is an interesting one for me here, because on paper it doesn't look like there's much of a size difference between these two. 5'9", 5'11", only a 2-inch difference in height. 71-inch reach versus 73-inch reach. Again, not a massive difference in reach. But if we look at the tail of the tape for the Thiago Moises fight, we can see that Moises is pretty much the same size as Frevola, right? 5'9", pretty much a 71-inch reach. 5'9", pretty much a 71-inch reach. Now, this is very notable to me, because I don't know whether the tail of the tape is wrong on Saint-Denis' Tapology. But if we go to the weigh-ins, I should have had this prepared. I do apologize, but just give me a second. Here we go, ceremonial weigh-ins. So if we, here we go, right? So, both guys wearing the same footwear. Moyes is pretty much the same size as Frevola, yet massive size difference between the two, right? Saint-Denis a lot taller than 2 inches, and as the camera pans in, you can just see by far the bigger, stronger, more physically imposing man. Bigger neck, bigger head, bigger shoulders, bigger. So this is one of those fights where I really want to see the ceremonial weigh-ins, the tail of the tape. But I just really want to see the ceremonial weigh-ins, because the tail of the tape might be lying to us here, and Benoit Saint-Denis might have a huge size advantage over Frevola that is not showing up in the tail of the tape, which would be notable to me. Now this is one of those fights which is a really good stylistic matchup for Benoit Saint-Denis. We know he's very aggressive, he fights at a high pace, he's got true legit knockout power in all of his, in every single limb on his body. He's a really strong MMA grappler as well. When you look at Frevola, his takedown offense isn't the best, even though his base is wrestling. You've seen him running into problems against grapplers in his past fights. He's not going to be able to match the aggression or the volume of Saint-Denis. He doesn't throw as diverse a range of strikes either. He's not as technical as Saint-Denis. And so Saint-Denis should definitely be favoured in this fight. The problem with this fight from a betting point of view is this tattoo here on Benoit Saint-Denis' right arm. The samurai tattoo is a very good representation of Saint-Denis' fighting style. He has that kill or be killed style where he comes out the gate super aggressive, trying to murder everyone in front of him from the first second to the last. Now this makes Saint-Denis very good, very formidable, very dangerous, but it also makes it difficult to bet on him at big favourite odds, because he's incredibly wild, incredibly reckless, and incredibly bad defensively. Now he's tough as nails, he's got a granite chin, he's very good at recovering, but he gets dinged a lot and he takes a lot of damage. We bet on Mr. Benoit Saint-Denis in his last fight against Thiago Moises. He came through for us in a big way, but Moises landed bombs in that fight. Wasn't able to slow Saint-Denis down or put him away, but Moises is a volume striker with a kick-based style of striking, doesn't really have any power in his hands. When you look at Frevola, he does have power in his hands. In fact, he's won his last 3 fights by knockout. And while Saint-Denis is a lot more durable than guys like Gennaro Valdez and Otman Izatar, it ain't no picnic KOing a guy like Drew Dober. And so this is one of those fights where I think the odds are exactly where they should be. Saint-Denis, deserves to be favoured, is much more likely to win. But because of how reckless he is, and because of how dangerous Frevola is, it's just not a good idea to bet Saint-Denis in this odds range, because his odds carry an implied probability of about 70%. And it's not easy to grind out a long-term profit betting fighters in this odds range when they're facing someone who's relatively well positioned to exploit their biggest weakness. In this case, Saint-Denis' biggest weakness being he's very prone to getting punched in the face hard, and Frevola's pretty good at punching guys very hard in the face. So this fight is an easy pass for me. Lean Saint-Denis, but one of those matchups that is difficult from a betting point of view. In terms of the over-under on this one, also very difficult. It is set at over 1.5 rounds. The problem with betting a fight like this is you can see 2 scenarios in which it's kind of equally likely it goes, and that's why it is very kind of on the money that the odds are roughly in the even money odds range for the over-under. So the 2 scenarios I'm talking about are, we know Benoit Saint-Denis is the kind of guy that is going to come out and engage Frevola from the first second to the last. He's bringing extreme violence, and he has that kill or be killed style. When you've got 2 guys as dangerous as Saint-Denis and Frevola, something's often got to give. And so you can see a situation where one of these guys gets knocked out in round 1. And that is the case for betting the under. On the other side of the coin, both these guys are also tough as nails. They have zero quit in them, and they're the kind of guys that will continue to fight to their last breath. So even if one of them gets hurt in round 1, it's not going to be easy for the other to put them away, because they're just going to keep going and hanging there for as long as possible. So, you know, you could see the fight going deeper as well. So I don't have a strong feeling on the over-under on this one. I think it's very risky to bet either. If you want to gamble, go play roulette. I mean, it's very difficult to call. Most likely outcome on this fight for me is Saint-Denis to win by knockout or TKO, but the odds are very, very bad. So again, props a bit dead on this fight. So yeah, no other prop I'm really that interested in. So I pass on props for this fight, and I hope you found that useful. Now let's break down the final fight on this main card, which is another clash of styles between Diego Lopes and Pat Sabatini. Also another fight in the even money odds range. So Sabatini, he's the slight favourite at average odds of about 1.83, which is going to be minus 120 for an implied probability of 55%. If we take a look at the odds on Mr. Lopes, he's around an average of 2.0, which is going to be plus 100 for an implied probability of 50%. So Lopes, 28 years old, 5'11", with a 72.5-inch reach. Sabatini, 33 years old, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. So also another fight where we really want to be looking at the ceremonial weigh-ins, because on paper it's possible Lopes could have a decent size advantage here, which could be very notable in how this fight is likely to play out. But it's a clash of styles. Diego Lopes, while he does have a decent level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, more of a striker, and Pat Sabatini very much a wrestler. So classic striker versus grappler matchup. If this fight stays standing, Sabatini is going to get smoked. He has absolutely nothing for Diego Lopes. Lopes will light him up on the feet, inflict a lot of damage, and life will be very comfortable for Diego Lopes if this is a stand-up fight, because Sabatini just doesn't have any power in his hands. It's not particularly good defensively either. Easy fight for Lopes if this fight stays standing. So the real question in this matchup is whether or not Sabatini can get the fight to the ground. And if you look at past performances from both these two, pretty likely Sabatini will be able to get this fight to the ground, because Lopes' takedown defense doesn't look particularly good. Now I'm judging him mostly on his fight against Movsar Evloev, which is problematic because Evloev is a far more physically imposing grappler than Sabatini is. It was also Diego Lopes' UFC debut, and I never like to be too harsh on guys for how they look in their debut, because, well, octagon jitters, performance anxiety, all that kind of thing. On top of that, Lopes also took the fight on short notice. Not easy to face someone like Movsar Evloev in your UFC debut. So Lopes didn't look good in that fight, looked very weak off his back, got taken down easily. And with Sabatini being such a good offensive wrestler, you would think that he would also be able to take Lopes down, have a good amount of success holding him down. But there are some complicated aspects to this fight, which makes this one a particularly difficult one for me to predict. Where do I even begin? The big issue that I've got with Pat Sabatini is that he really lacks physicality to his wrestling. He's quite weak. Now, the trade-off of him lacking physicality and being quite weak is that he can spam takedowns relentlessly and grapple hard for 15 minutes without slowing down. So, you know, it often goes one of two ways, right? You have these big, strong, athletic, physically imposing guys, but they can't go hard for too long without slowing. Then you have guys like Sabatini that aren't particularly physically imposing or athletic, but they can go hard for 15 minutes. They don't have those big old muscles which slow them down, right? The problem I've got with this fight is that Movsar Evloev is a far better offensive wrestler and far more physically imposing than Sabatini. And Diego Lopes was doing a pretty good job of neutralizing the threat of Evloev's grappling until he started to slow down. Now, did Lopes slow in that fight because Lopes will slow in every fight and he gasses as fights wear on? Or did he slow because of the pace that Evloev put on him? Did he slow because he was coming on short notice, wasn't in the best shape? Will his cardio look a lot better in this fight on a full camp against Sabatini? Because if Lopes shows up and performs like he did against Evloev, Sabatini's probably going to take him down, wear him out, grind him out, win a decision. But if Lopes shows up with good enough cardio to defend takedowns for 3 rounds, I think Lopes has got the technique, the ground game, the takedown defense to keep the fight standing, or the majority of the fight standing, and outstruck Sabatini by a wide margin. So it's a very complicated fight and a very difficult one to predict because we haven't seen Diego Lopes in the UFC on a full camp. And we can't really go back to his earlier fights to gauge what his cardio was like, because these fights were against a relatively low level of opponent. And they were a long time ago, right? If you go back, watch this fight from 2 years ago, I mean, a lot could have improved in the last 2 years. Lopes' cardio could be a lot better now. So it's a very difficult fight to call. I don't really have a very strong opinion on it and don't really lean either way. Bit of a coin flip for me, this. I think you build a strong case for either guy winning because both guys have got extreme advantages in the area that the other is weak. The only other thing I would say about this is that Sabatini doesn't do a lot from top position, so when he gets takedowns, he kind of just holds on to you. He does have the odd submission here and there, but not particularly dangerous from top position, whereas Diego Lopes has a very, very active guard. So it is possible that Lopes could cause Sabatini some problems off his back, but again, Sabatini, very good grappler, so that won't be an easy thing to do. Okay, if we take a look at the over-under on this one, where are we? So both these guys very tough. Do think pretty good chance this one will go deep. I lean more towards this fight going to a decision. And at underdog odds, if you wanted to bet a little bit of money on this fight to make watching more interesting, betting on this fight to go over 2.5 rounds, I don't hate it. It's not something I'll be betting myself, but I could see this fight going deep. Over 1.5 rounds, certainly worth a look. If I decide to bet that myself, I'll obviously put it in our Discord community under the pre-fight betting channel, but I'll give that one a little bit more thought. In terms of the props on this one, this is not something that I'm going to be betting myself, but if you wanted to bet this fight to make watching it a bit more interesting, Lopes by decision could be worth a look. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my website, MMABettingTips.com, for breakdown videos on all the prelim fights on this card, as well as live in-play betting tips broadcast through the power of Discord, where we make a profit on 75% of UFC Fight Night cards since 2021. So if you watch every UFC event live, I think my live betting service is something that could be very useful to you. So thank you very much for watching. Take care. Have a great weekend. Hope you make loads of money. We'll be back next week with another breakdown video. Nice one, guys. Take care. Bye.